See, oh.
There we go. So, hello.
Hello.
It's nice to meet you.
Likewise.
To start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
I'm Denise Hyble, and I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, United States.
I actually have a friend in that exact same tiny town.
I'd love to talk later.
Yes, that's funny. So the first question is really, who are you as a human being, as a person? And that can be your values, your interests, your passions, or your qualities about yourself, whatever you'd like.
Okay. That is such a great question. I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two boys who are in their 20s now. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm in private practice. And I'm a yoga instructor. So I teach yoga and I bring the two together. Let's see, I'm a gardener. I knit. I'm perhaps obsessive about my knitting, but it's my great joy and my great fear that at some point I won't be able to knit. So I love it. My passions are probably my garden, my yoga, my relationships, my cat, my dog, my boys, my husband, and my friends, especially, during this pandemic, it really has shown me how precious those connections are.
Okay. And what would you say are some of the values that you hold or that you organize yourself around?
Organize myself around. Well, kindness, yeah. And consideration for the other, noticing that there is another. And I see that in my boys, and that pleases me. That makes me feel like I must be doing something right if they've carried that forward. They're very kind and helpful young men. Values. I think I value embodiment. I value being in the moment. I do a lot of work around body and movement and meditation, and just showing up and presencing ourselves in the moment, but also in our bodies. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious a little bit about where you come from, some of your history, and I'm wondering if a particular event or a set of circumstances in your life you would say really influenced who you are or how you are.
So I'm from a small, very small suburb of Detroit, very sheltered, very white, Catholic. Not me, I'm not Catholic, but the people I grew up with, that's what I grew up with. I can pinpoint moments. I think the biggest thing was just my childhood, just the kind of family I grew up in. There were only 4 of us, my parents, my brother, and I. And I think I'm being kind when I say it was dysfunctional. So that really formed who I was and what I had an interest in. I don't think I thought as a child that what I was experiencing was the same as what other people were experiencing, but I knew there was something different about my family from others. So when I went to college, that just blew my mind. I was a resident assistant in a dormitory, and girls would come into my room and talk with me. And when I look back now, I didn't know there was such a thing as therapy, but I think that was the beginning. One resident once said, "Oh, there's something about that chair in Denise's room." I had this old broken armchair, and I just loved talking. and hearing other people's experiences and seeing that other people were not maybe having my experience, but they were, they had had their own caves to climb out of. So that was really big for me. Probably the biggest person was my first Gestalt therapist. When I think back, if I had not met her, would I have the life that I do now? And I don't think so. I don't. So do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah. Would you like to say more about that relationship or
Yeah.
how it impacted you?
Yeah. She, again, I'm in a university town, but it's small. And I was in a counseling program. I had pursued, my first 2 degrees were in education. And once I got in working with the students, I realized it was not, I didn't want to educate them. I just wanted to talk with them. So I was in a counseling program, and I had friends who would go to this one Gestalt therapist. Well, there were 2 Gestalt therapists in this town, and many of my friends were going to this woman, and it sounded awful. I thought the experiences they were having sounded just horrendous. Like they were really having to work and emoting. And she actually this woman came to our center where I was doing an internship and gave a presentation, and she went, she got right to some core issues with us. And again, I thought, oh, that's just too much. But eventually I did go to her, and she became just the most pivotal person in my life, really. At one point I was doing individual with her. I did group with her. At one point, I moved on to doing supervision with her. I really felt sponsored and mentored and loved by her.
And I'm curious, unless the story takes a drastic turn in a different direction, would you like to say who it was?
Sure. Her name is Carol Holton. She's still here. She has had some illnesses, and she's not able to, she's had a stroke, and she's not able to sit with people any longer, but her name is Carol Holton. And she actually introduced me to Joseph Zinker. And Joseph used to come to Bloomington, and he would, in the day, before I met him, he was running groups, and he'd be here for the whole weekend, maybe even longer, I don't know. But he would run a men's group, a therapist group. And at some point, Carol brought me into that group, and wow. Again, it was just, it just widened my lens. And I thought, well, when my kids grow up, I'll go away to one of these training centers. There apparently are training centers. And I had a colleague and a friend who was doing these, and she was changing so much that I couldn't wait. So I went to the Cape in Wellfleet, and I went to the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. And Cleveland was so wonderful for me. Met a lot of fabulous, skilled, bright people. They asked me to teach there, so I taught for some years. But it was at the Cape that I met Sonia Neves. And that was pivotal. That just, I mean, even as I'm speaking, I could feel my heart up here, and I just feel love. She was an amazing woman. And I learned from her something about non-performance or she just was. She stood up, she talked, and the room would go quiet. She was so simple. She was not simple, but she would say her interventions were so simple and so clean and so compassionate. Yeah, I got a lot from Sonia.
So how would you say that those encounters with Carol, with Sonia in Cleveland, how did Gestalt change you as a person? How has it affected you?
Oh, that's good. I like that question. I like thinking about that. I think it rounded off my sharp edges. How about that? I think it softened me, but it also sharpened me, right? I mean, I feel, my interventions, I feel like I can I've got more creativity, or I can see, it gave me a very wide lens to look through. I perceive the world through the lens of Gestalt, right? Figure, ground, cycle of experience. I mean, it gave me tools, but it also gave me a way to see things, people, myself. And I think it helped to, so if I say it softened my shoulders, I guess I would say I became less defensive. I became more vulnerable or more available to myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just speaking a little bit more about you as a person, I'm curious about a few different aspects of yourself. And one of those would be how you experience or have come to understand yourself within your gender or as a woman.
Oh. So I was born female. I've always been comfortable being female. There were very prescribed roles and rules in my culture about what a woman was or could be. I did an art project in first grade where the teacher asked, what do you want to be when you grew up? And I drew a stewardess and a teacher. I can look at it now and say, oh, I wanted to help. But those were the only ways that I could imagine helping.
I'm just thinking, metaphorically, you're
Yeah,
accompanying people on journeys. Maybe that's the stewardess part. I don't know.
Traveling, teaching, serving.
And how has that sense of yourself evolved? How has that changed, or what's been challenged?
Yeah, I'm going to say again, when I started at a commuter college. And then that was in Michigan. And then I transferred here. I could just tell I needed some launching. So I launched to Bloomington, Indiana, which is a Big Ten school, Indiana University. And that was just, wow. I mean, I had no idea that there were so many differences. I mean, again, my town was white, seemingly straight. And it was like the opportunities just opened up. I worked a little bit with Alan Bell. He is deceased now, but he was a professor in our department, worked with the Kinsey Institute, is located at Indiana University. He wrote the book Homosexualities. I mean, my view just, again, got wider, and I saw that there were just so many more options about who one can love and how one can love. So I think that, yeah, widened my lens a little bit more.
And I've noticed you've mentioned a couple times you've noticed that you're white and that there is some whiteness around you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you understand yourself in terms of power and privilege in the society that you live in.
Yeah. Well, I'm white and I'm a female. And so I get lots of passes. I am perceived as a non-threat at times that others would not be perceived as a non-threat. I was in college dating a man who was Black, and we have a small town. Indiana is very conservative. I would only live in Bloomington, but we have a small town close by that in the past there was, KKK activity. And it was so clear how I was treated in that town compared to him. So I see it as a privilege, and I try to use it. And I see the ways that my eldest son does that too. How he uses his privilege to speak for others. He's really become, he's a nurse, but I see him standing up for those who don't have the same privilege as he does.
Yeah, so there's something to holding that power and using it for something.
Oh, there's a responsibility there, isn't there? I mean, gosh, yeah, absolutely. We have to stay aware that I have to stay aware that I have this.
Okay. Well, I'm also a little bit curious about what you do within your own work, the things that you have gotten into in Gestalt, what's held your interest, what you've developed, if there's any particular communities or projects that you've enjoyed over the years.
Ooh, I like that question too. What do I do? Okay, well, I run groups. I've always run groups. Prior to having children, at one point I had 4 groups. I have 1 now. That feels just fine. Circles, I love circles. I love Gestalt circles. There's nothing like sitting in a Gestalt circle. I'm still sitting in a Gestalt circle. Carol Brockman is someone. So I went back to the Cape a couple years ago. I did a 2-week program, and then I created this other program that's called the Third Week. And I went there and I met Carol Brockman and Stuart Simon. Oh my gosh. Just again, fabulous. And Carol is a lot like Sonia. I mean, she just opens her mouth and just wonderful. So I go to a circle, a weekend that we spend with her on a little island off of Maine. That's very precious. And I've actually invited her to Bloomington. So Joseph Zinker used to come to Bloomington, and then he no longer could. And then we invited Michael Clemens to come with a group of therapists. And now I invite Carol to come. So that's a big thing I like to do. I like to bring groups together.
That's a hobby of mine too.
It's
exhausting. But yeah.
In both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exciting and exhausting. Yeah.
Okay.
I work a lot with the body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm a yoga instructor. I teach a class, yoga for stress, anxiety, and depression. And I'm pretty excited. I put it on Zoom when the pandemic hit. That was a stretch. And I just finished doing it again as a recording. And this is not my forte. IT is not, but that's pretty exciting to me that I can now offer it to people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do a lot of work around the body and trauma. That's what I work with. I work with trauma. I love trauma. I love trauma.
It's great stuff.
It is, right? And I love it when I'm with a group of people or somebody says, I love trauma. It's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I've gotten some training in neurogenic yoga and TRE. So I was just weaving that into my practice when COVID hit. So I want to pick that back up. And yeah, am I answering your question? What I do in my
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also curious about whether you feel like you're part of something that could be called a Gestalt community. Does that mean anything to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So for instance, I don't have any connection right now. I don't think to anyone in Cleveland, but I still feel Cleveland. I feel Cleveland. I do feel connected to the Gestalt International Study Center, probably because I'm still seeing Carol, and I've had some supervision with Stuart. I feel like they're in my bones. And this group that comes together, Carol's been very generous. We meet on a regular basis on Zoom now. So we keep ourselves connected. And I feel like in this town, there's more and more people getting trained. And yeah, I feel like I've got a community here in this town. But I have to say, listening to some of your videos, I did listen to some, and I feel kinship. So I'm listening to an interview of someone in another country, and I know the language. I know of what they're speaking, and that feels really important to me.
Okay, so I am wondering, it sounds like it's been a fairly positive relationship, but I'm wondering what you have run up against as challenges, either as a person in different aspects of your life or with Gestalt in particular.
Gestalt. Well, I think just my first entry into it was a challenge because it seemed so core, scary. I'm so glad I took that dive. I have a moment with Joseph Zinker at the Cape where we were doing, I don't know, I was the practice therapist and we were working with a system, a couple, I'm not sure. And I was trying the model. It's a really great model. And I was trying it on, and Joseph was the teacher who was in the room with us. He leaned over and he said, "Do you really believe what you're saying?" I threw my head in my hands. I went, "No, I don't. I think they are so messed up. I can't see anything positive about them." And it was a moment. It was one of those, like, I think prior to that, I had found people who had something and I wanted to be like them. So I tried to be like them. And Joseph, I don't know if you've ever met Joseph, you just can't. You can't be like Joseph. No one can be like Joseph Sinker. But it was good. He was asking me not to be like him. And that, it seems so simple now, but it was good to let my authentic voice come up. Oh, here's another moment. Okay, this is early in my practice. I remember sitting with a client and thinking, oh man, they need a therapist. Now I'm still a very young therapist. It's in my 20s, but I'm thinking I need to give them my therapist name. So I think
Need an adult, someone who's more adult than me.
Is there a hotline? So I think, over the years, I've had those moments, but I've also had such fabulous mentorship in the world of Gestalt, who didn't say, here's something you need to learn, or here's a formula, here's how to fix the problem. Really, it's been be yourself. I mean, what a great profession, and what a great lens to look at our profession. Like, the best way that I can prepare for my clients is to take care of myself, do my own work, figure out what is my work, where are my boundaries, sleep, eat well.
That.
I know, right? What a great job. Yeah.
So what ended up happening with the client who you thought needed a therapist?
Oh, she was with me for years.
Oh, she found one then.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Heather. She did. I found it after her.
Nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And so what would some of the other, the challenges are often the exact same moments that are highlights. Absolutely. But I'm wondering if anything else comes to mind as a moment that wasn't quite so uncomfortable at first, but that was just really one of those peaks of your experience.
So you mean Gestalt, or just in my profession, any kind of challenge?
Either, because I never really know. Some people have literally hiked Mount Everest, and other people have had a really good moment in a session that they want to share.
Oh, I see. I do have a memory of 28 years ago of being with a client, and I was pregnant, and very pregnant. And there was just a lot of very strong emotions in the room. And it was the first time, I don't know, it was a funny moment. It was should I be aware of, there's three of us now. There's not just two of us. So that was an interesting challenge. How close to get physically, emotionally, verbally. I have noticed that over time my practice gets larger when I've got more space, and it did right around that time get a little bit smaller when I started having babies. But that was an awkward, and it wasn't just a moment, it was just an awkward time. Like, how do I navigate this where I'm giving, permission for my clients to be where they need to be, and I can be with them, but maybe I can't. Yeah,
there's something about that, as being a woman in any field, is how is pregnancy and maternity even acknowledged in what we do. Right. It's an interesting thing to navigate.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe my divorce too. I went through a divorce, I don't know, over 10 years ago. And it was hard. And, my business is generally in my home. And I think it was at that point. I'm not sure. It is now. So they knew I was going through some pain. And you know, we show up and we're all of ourselves, which includes the hard parts. So that was a challenge navigating that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a book that I still haven't bought because I'm also imperfect, but there's something about the myth of the, what is it? Oh God, I'm gonna get it wrong. It's the myth of the unburdened therapist or something like that. It's basically about therapists not being perfect.
Oh, like that. That sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so going through, challenges, divorces,
Yeah,
messy bits of life where
right,
we're not the perfect model of how to get through things.
right,
It's a good thing
absolutely.
we have a process orientation, I think, usually.
Right, right. And mentors and supervisors and places, excuse me, to do our own work.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
So another thing that I am curious about, were you going to say something? Sorry.
No.
Okay. So I am also curious if anything else came up as one of those highlights, because you went back and found another challenge, but I'm wondering if there's another particular moment that you think is sort of one of those highlights. The favorite, this is sometimes a storytelling moment or
Yeah.
just things that come back to people, just a piece of work that you've done or that you've done with someone.
Well, I could tell you something about my first therapist, Carol. So Carol was very creative. I mean, she just was. She was a dancer, and I think she was doing work with people before she even um, got a license. Like she was doing some work at the hospital, helping folks who were in IOPs, maybe doing dance or movement. So I've been in a group with her for years, and you know, it just becomes a family. Not always fun, but yeah, like a family. And she had her first, I believe she had her first seizure in that group, and I was working with her. So I'm sitting right next to her, and she has a seizure, and she's having an epileptic seizure. As I said, I think it's her first one, and she falls into my lap. We all think she's being creative. We all try to figure out what is the message she's trying to teach us.
Oh no.
And maybe it only lasted a couple seconds that we weren't tuned in, but eventually we realized, oh my God, she's having a problem. We've got to call someone. So that's a moment that stands out for me. But
Yeah, that would be memorable, I think.
was,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
So I am also curious about what is next for you and from your perspective, what you think is next for Gestalt.
Oh my, next for Gestalt?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're asking me. I don't know. I wish it were a little bit more known.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think it's more known. I'm asked less and less, what is Gestalt? But I am still asked it. It seemed like 20 years ago, or even 40 years ago, it almost seemed like exotic. What's Gestalt? So I do wish it was more out there. Especially since when I plug into other programs and see what they have to offer, I see, well, that's just Gestalt. We've been doing that for a long time. So I can say that. For myself, I hope to keep sitting with people. I hope it's the kind of job, if our health stays and our brain still works, we can keep sitting with people. I've had a lot of loss in the last years. I've had a lot of people die. And so I'm seeing how, you know, it could be in 3 months. You know, my mother died a year ago and she had 3 months. And that's how quick it is sometimes, or even quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope to keep showing up every moment. I have some interest in diving a little bit more to working with the body. And right before the pandemic hit, I was reading up on Rosen, the Rosen method, Maria Rosen. And again, as I read it, I think, well, that's just Gestalt, but working with the body, again, there's no difference. And I've plugged in into a couple things on Zoom, and I think the same thing. Well, That's Gestalt. That's, and y'all talk the same language that we talk.
Mhm.
So I think I might want to, go away and have some experiences with that and bring that back to my clients. I plan on doing yoga until I can't. I like my clients get older, I get older. It's so valuable.
Mhm.
So yeah.
That's something I didn't ask actually, is how you are experiencing your age.
Oh
Does
boy.
anything come to mind about that?
Yeah, this has been a hard year. I'm only 62, but yeah, this is, I said I garden, but this year I did not garden. I was having back problems and walking problems. There was even a period where I couldn't walk. So that's been interesting for me. And of course, I assumed it was my grief, and I've been doing a lot of work on my body, with my body. I'm having to be very gentle and compassionate and slow. I mean, my yoga right now is, the movements are very, very small. And I once had a teacher who told me, a yoga teacher who said, it's your illnesses that will be great teachers. You will learn so much. And I think that's why I am interested in, pursuing more about the body, because that's what I'm having to attend to right now. Aging. And that's also why I love sitting with Carol Brockman. She's almost 20 years older than me. And I wish I could be half as witty and brilliant and juicy as that woman is.
She has a lot of energy. I was impressed.
Yeah.
I was
She's
impressed.
just fabulous.
Mhm.
And that's so invaluable, I think, to have elders, people who start creating the path before us. I'm so grateful to her.
Mhm. Okay, well, is there anything else that you would like to add at this point, either about yourself or about Gestalt, or any final thoughts?
I can't think of anything, Heather.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is it okay if we leave it here then?
Absolutely.